Hey guys, back with another video today. I'm hoping that I've gotten all my technical problems figured out. For some reason my videos weren't uploading in max resolution, even though I was recording them in max resolution. So I was a little frustrated by that, but I think I got the problem sorted out and fixed, so fingers crossed. But anyways, I wanted to talk about Star Wars. There's been some news. I think it's been disappointing news. There was a brief moment, taking into context, there was a brief moment of maybe Disney knows that there's something wrong, but there's been some news recently that tells me that Disney is out of touch with what the problem is. I think they understand that there's a problem, they just don't know the root cause of the problem. So, to give a little background, our friend here, Kathleen Kennedy, who's been kind of the showrunner for the Star Wars franchise since Lucasfilm was bought out by Disney. People have complained that she has injected kind of a feministic or third wave feminism or SJW agenda into the films, which wasn't readily apparent in Episode 7. It was just kind of there in the background. It wasn't. A lot of people didn't truly complain about it, but it wasn't until Episode 8 when Rian Johnson took over that it was very obvious that there was this agenda in the films, and there was massive backlash for that. So much where Rian Johnson's projects have been canceled with Lucasfilms, and J.J. Abrams has decided to come back and try to fix it. And I really don't have much hope. I had a little bit of hope when I heard J.J. Abrams was coming back. I had a little bit of hope when the rumors that Kathleen Kennedy was going to be going, and there was a little bit of hope when our pal Bob Iger, or Iger, or whatever, CEO of Disney, had written an article or had told investors that that they recognized that there was a problem and he wanted to fix it. So, but the question is what was that problem? So, we have here an article from The Verge. This is back on September 20th, so it's a little bit of old news, but I think this kind of maybe gives some context to the newer news that we'll be discussing shortly. So we have here, since Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012, it's gone all out to revitalize the science fiction franchise. But after Solo's box office numbers came in well under its astronomical expectations, it seems that Disney is going to ease up a bit on the franchise. Disney CEO Bob Iger told The Hollywood Reporter they did too much too fast and fans could expect some slowdown in the franchise. And I'm going to add my commentary to that in a second. But Disney has released 4 films since 2015: Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and Solo. And there were mixed saga films that were a mix of saga films that continue the larger Skywalker storyline. After The Force Awakens blew away box office records and Rogue One performed really well, it seemed like Disney had found a way to just print money, and it was content to release as many films as it could. Last year, Iger indicated that the company was looking at its plans for the next decade and a half for the franchise. But it hasn't lived up to expectations. The Last Jedi outdid Rogue One, but it didn't match The Force Awakens' box office turnout. And while Solo certainly set up the potential for follow-up films, it came in just under $400 million at the global box office, which is by far the lowest-grossing live-action film in the entire franchise. The pilot for The Clone Wars did a measly $68 million when it was dumped into theaters. So, Bob Iger has said, we're doing too much too fast, right? Which I think it maybe that's true, but if you look at Marvel, which is also a Disney IP, they're doing at least 2 Marvel films a year, as opposed to Disney doing 1 Star Wars film a year, and they sometimes even 3 films, right? And while granted the last couple of films have been okay, I mean, Infinity War was amazing, but a couple of films prior to that and since then have been they're okay, but they're not terrible. And I think there's no reason why Star Wars shouldn't be successful, because we had Force Awakens, which was a decent movie, Star Wars movie, and I think a lot of the hype that Star Wars was back and this movie wasn't complete garbage, it set the bar really, really high, or the bar of expectation really, really high. And Rogue One was actually surprisingly well. To be honest, I think Rogue One is probably the best of the 4 movies that they've done so far. I mean, that's just my opinion. And then Solo, which I didn't even see. I didn't have any interest. The Last Jedi just kind of killed any interest I had. Unfortunately, like, if they release a trailer for Episode 9 tomorrow, I don't know if I would really care. I don't know if it can be saved. I really don't. But that remains to be seen. Speaking to the Hollywood Reporter, Iger acknowledged that he had made timing decision, and as much as I look back, as I look back, I think the mistake that I made, I take the blame, was too little, too much, or was too much, too fast. But he notes that while we can expect some slowdown, Disney certainly isn't killing off Star Wars. Iger pointed to J.J. Abrams' upcoming Episode 9 and the variety of projects that have been publicly announced, noting that they're at the point where we're going to start making decisions about what comes next after Episode 9. Iger also echoed some of those thoughts about Disney's other ventures, such as its forthcoming streaming service and its Fox acquisition, and then he goes on to talk about X-Men. So, he's saying we inundated the market with Star Wars. And while I agree to that, and so I think where people say, well, Marvel is doing so many movies and is still doing well, I think the fact is that with Marvel you have so many storylines, so many characters that are loosely tied, and they're now getting tied together, but loosely tied, different storylines. They're not continuations, right? So they're all kind of mini stories with an underlying connection to other movies. So it's a little bit easier to, I guess, digest more of it in a way. And Star Wars has, decades. I think it was in the mid-90s when Heir to the Empire, which was the first expanded universe book, came out. And so you had basically decades of just fan fiction, right? That people were ardent, rabid fans of. And that created an expectation in our mind of what Star Wars should be, and it's not. And there's kind of a backlash against that. So there's that argument. The other argument is just that they're not that good in movies. I mean, The Force Awakens was okay. I personally, I think it was okay. It was decent film. I think it was. I wasn't the happiest at how they handled Han Solo, but I could deal with it. I mean, I understood the films were handing off. The old heroes handing off the mantle to the new generation of heroes, but The Last Jedi was just complete garbage, and there's plenty of videos out there kind of dissecting why it's bad, or maybe even why it's good. I mean, I disagree with my own people in my own family about how terrible this movie is, so it's definitely polarizing. But Rogue One was good, right? And Solo, which I just had no interest in. Even when I saw the first trailer, I was like, ugh, didn't like it. So, it's really the content of the movies that's the problem, and that's what everyone's been complaining about. And of course, naturally, if you go online and complain, you're just a misogynist, you're a racist, you're a bigot, whatever. I mean, the whole thing with Rose Tico, the backlash was that she was a terrible character that was poorly written, but yet we're just racist because she was Asian, right? I guess that's just how it works. I mean, nobody cares that she's Asian. I mean, give me a break. I mean, Mace Windu, excellent character. Everybody loves Mace Windu, and he's African American, right? So it's not about the race; it's just how terribly written the character is. So, so Disney's not recognizing the root of the problem, right? And a lot of people would say the root of the problem is Kathleen Kennedy, and there was a lot of rumor that she was going to be ousted after the failure of, The Last Jedi, which, I mean, it wasn't technically a failure, but it didn't live up to expectations, and Solo, which definitely was a failure. People were expecting that Kathleen Kennedy was going to get ousted. Until Hollywood Reporter, a couple days ago, reported Star Wars chief Kathleen Kennedy's Lucasfilm deal extended for 3 years. Joy. So this was the news that we didn't want to hear. After the box office disappointment of Solo: A Star Wars Story, the studio plans to expand the universe with new characters introduced in movies and television shows. Kathleen Kennedy has reignited her lightsaber. The lead producer and architect of the Star Wars franchise has renewed her contract to remain president of Lucasfilm for another 3 years through 2021, the Hollywood Reporter has learned. And I've kind of briefly scanned this article. My feeling is that that's going to be the end of the current quote-unquote phase of Star Wars, and I think she is just going to be there to see it out, and then she's going to be leaving the Star Wars franchise. I don't think she'll be leaving Lucasfilm, but maybe she'll be leaving the Star Wars franchise or something. That's my guess. The movie is a vote of confidence. Kennedy, who took command of Lucasfilm after Disney's $4 billion acquisition from George Lucas in 2012, and has overseen the relaunch of Star Wars, one of the most revered movie properties in cinematic history. Disney's 4 new Star Wars films have grossed about $4.5 billion at the worldwide box office. Ancillary and merchandising have brought billions more into the studio's coffers. But it hasn't always been easy money. Kennedy has had to replace directors on 2 movies that were either in production or post-production. Chris Lord and Phil Miller were fired from Solo, a Star Wars story, on June 20th of 2017, less than a year before the film's release. Kennedy also effectively replaced Rogue One, a Star Wars story, director Gareth Edwards with their helmer Tony Gilroy, though Edwards kept his directing credit. Last year, Colin Trevorrow, who was to have directed Star Wars Episode 9, was fired and replaced with the series Episode 7 helmer J.J. Abrams a week later. And this goes back to, I think they're wanting J.J. to kind of come in and try to rescue the film to recreate the magic he had from Episode 7 in a sense. Kennedy's position is one of the most visible interactions, the most highly scrutinized in Hollywood due to the immense popularity of Lucasfilm's franchises, which also include the Indiana Jones series, which have also... Crystal Skull was such a terrible movie. So it's notable that her renewal follows the summer's Solo Star Wars story, the first box office disappointment for the franchise, which grossed only $392 million worldwide. It led analysts to estimate a loss for the film of about $50 million to $80 million or more. So you can see here, by 2017, The Last Jedi and 2016's Rogue One grossed $1 billion globally. 2015's Force Awakens topped $2 billion in receipts. So you can see The Last Jedi did half as well as Force Awakens. So that's why they're like, okay, Abrams, we need you to do that again. Kennedy's deal extension also follows a polarizing reaction to Last Jedi, which sits at 91% fresh on review aggregated Rotten Tomatoes, but was flooded with unusually angry fan complaints on social media about key plot choices. Which I'm actually glad that they're saying about key plot choices, because that was the important thing. If you were to ask, a lot of people in the Twitter sphere, all the blue check marks, it was because we're racist and misogynist and bigots and stuff like that. The reaction to Last Jedi and Solo has resulted in a shift in studio strategy, with Disney making plans to slow the output of movies. You'd expect some slowdown, Disney CEO Bob Iger told THR in an interview published on September 20th, adding, but that doesn't mean we're not going to make films. So, the only Star Wars film currently underway is Episode 9, currently shooting in London, and set for release December 20th, 2019. Sources tell The Hollywood Reporter that Episode 9 will be the last of the chapter installments, with Disney planning on touting it as a selling point in the promotion campaign for the film in the year leading up to its release. Lucasfilm is developing feature projects from Game of Thrones creators David Benioff, I never knew how to say his name, and D.B. Weiss, as well as potential trilogy from Rian Johnson, the filmmaker behind Last Jedi. Johnson, however, is currently prepping to shoot a detective thriller that is to star Daniel Craig. What's disappointing about Rian Johnson is that while his potential trilogy has been put on hold, although I've heard stories that it's just been canned, it's such a shame because Looper was such a good film, and he did one of the best episodes of Breaking Bad, Ozymandias. So it's just... I had high expectations of Last Jedi simply because it was Rian Johnson, and that failed. And who knows, maybe his detective thriller, Daniel Craig, will be excellent, and I hope it is. I do think he's a good filmmaker. I just think he was a terrible choice for Star Wars. Sources say that the near future of Star Wars lies in television, with Kennedy-led Lucasfilm planning on expanding the universe with new characters in that medium. The shows that at this stage include a live-action series which is currently casting, run by Jon Favreau, and the animated Star Wars The Clone Wars, both of which will air on Disney's Untitled streaming service, which is slated to launch in the second half of 2019. Meanwhile, another animated series, Star Wars Resistance, set to premiere next month on the Disney Channel, which I don't really have a problem with going to TV. TV is like such... I would say with the advent of shows like 24 and Lost, TV has become a much better medium for telling stories. But... The Star Wars shows that they've put out have up to this date been good, right? And we know Jon Favreau is he's good. So he did excellent with Iron Man. He has the chops for something like this, right? If you could do a Marvel movie, you could probably do a Star Wars movie because they both lie in that nerd geek sphere. So I have hope for that. Lucasfilm's also developing a new Indiana Jones movie, the fifth in a series starring Harrison Ford, directed by Spielberg. But the project recently saw its release date pushed back to July 2020, or from July 2020 to July 2021. Script issues were the cause. The last installment, 2008's Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, grossed $786 million worldwide, adjusted for inflation. And I blame Crystal Skull on George Lucas and not necessarily Kathleen Kennedy. So who knows? Maybe the next Indiana Jones will be great. Maybe Harrison Ford's just too old and needs to move on. I don't know. I'm just kind of, I don't know. And the rest of the article kind of talks about the history of Kathleen Kennedy. So, to be honest, I think Star Wars is, as far as main franchise installments, I think maybe as movies in general, Star Wars is dead. Maybe if we got something like an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie directed by, somebody like a Favreau, somebody like maybe even J.J. Abrams again, I'd be okay with that. Maybe anthology movies are the way to go, right? Although Solo was terrible. But I think officially Star Wars is dead. And I'm hoping maybe the TV shows will bring it back, but at this point I'm treating it as a dead franchise. And I hope that's not the case. I really don't. I hope. I love Star Wars. It's been an important part of my life. And it is a cultural, it defines, it's a cornerstone of an entire culture, internet culture, geek culture, whatever you want to call it. It's a cornerstone of that. And I think Disney has successfully killed it. I think keeping Kathleen Kennedy on, even just so they can finish out the episode 9 phase, if you will, and maybe at least get the TV show started, I think that's just a terrible move. And I know they just can't go back and say Last Jedi never happened and restart. They can't do that as much as people want them to. They just can't. So with that, I think Star Wars is dead. Disney, I think, is out of touch. And I just hope that it doesn't affect Marvel. I hope Marvel stays away from the mess that Star Wars has become. But so far, so good, but we'll see. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching.